Patrick McNeil back with you at the intermission as it's time now for part 2 of our look at the Midwest Division in the Ontario Hockey League with Mike Stubbs, the play-by-play of the London Knights. The other 4 teams in the Midwest Division are the Guelph Storm, Owen Sound Attack, Erie Otters, and Kitchener Rangers.
We spoke earlier about coaches. Fans in Cape Breton know all too well about George Burnett, who won the Calder Cup here and won the OHL championship in Guelph. He loses one of his assistants, Jake Grimes, who's come to Cape Breton to coach the Eagles. But what kind of team does he have in front of him this year in Guelph? We see Ron Aranda bringing back some decent pieces as they try to defend the Q title. What do Guelph's prospects look like?
Guelph did lose a lot of key players, and that's something that they were ready for. But when you look back to last year, if you win a championship, you're going to say, that's worth it, no matter what happens this year. But Guelph actually came into camp and had a lot of guys impressed, guys that maybe you didn't know much about. Jacob Roach, he was an 8th-round pick of the Sudbury Wolves. And then you have players that were kind of along for the ride last year, but maybe didn't have starring roles. Keegan Stevenson would be one, Ben McFarland. They still have Pavel Gogolev, who they picked up in the Ryan Merkley trade last year. And then they've got a guy named Cam Hillis, who's a draft pick of the Montreal Canadiens. Hillis is somebody who was injured much of last year. He is such a great player. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do this year, simply because he didn't have that sophomore year, because last year was taken away from him by injury. But he's such a smart player, such a skilled player. Guelph will still be in a building phase. They've made some deals, and they might make some more that look toward the future. But they have their OHL championship, and they made it all the way to the semifinal of the Memorial Cup. George Burnett, again, that experienced coach and a good teaching coach who's able to get a young team building right back to what he hopes is where they were last year.
Fans will just look up at the banner, I guess, if times get to be too tough. You mentioned Cam Hillis. It would take a long time for us to cover all the high-profile draft picks in the division, but a few others I want to talk about. Connor McMichael, a first-rounder that plays for your team in London, and another player it looks like could be a first-rounder, Jamie Drysdale, playing for the Erie Otters. Tell us about those guys.
Well, let's start with Jamie Drysdale, because if you're watching for the NHL entry draft, he's just an electric player. He can pick up a puck in his own zone, and I think Drysdale sometimes can get shortchanged by hockey statistics, because Jamie Drysdale will do so many good things carrying the puck out of his own zone. He's got great quickness. He'll get the puck into the offensive zone, and then he might make that first pass that ultimately ends up in the net. Only 2 people have touched the puck after that, but he's done so much work getting it. Maybe he's not the biggest guy, but because of his quickness, because of his smarts, he's never outsmarted on the ice. He's somebody that is going to make an NHL team very happy. He fits the mold of what you want in an offensive defenseman this day and age. Connor McMichael is a guy who had 36 goals last year. Knights general manager Mark Hunter kind of wondered aloud going into the season, could he hit 50? He was picked by the Washington Capitals in the first round. He's come out and he's put up 7 goals in 4 games. He's somebody that when he gets an opportunity to put the puck in the net, he does. Will that be his MO at the NHL level? I don't know. But right now in junior, yeah, he cashes in on chances. He's somebody that can kind of disappear on the ice. You know those players, they're not there. And then all of a sudden, there they are in the slot, firing a puck into the top corner. He's not just a sniper. He's that 200-foot guy. He's somebody that had 36 goals and 36 assists last year. He may have had to take a bit of a lesser role in the playoffs just because the Knights added some veteran talent. He was the guy that accepted the fact that he was only 17 and that his time would come. Well, already his time is coming. He's got an OHL Player of the Week honor on his resume for this year. And
we talked about Drysdale playing in Erie, and some good news with the Erie Otters. They signed a 10-year lease to stay in Erie. I heard there had been rumors about them perhaps moving, and Connor McDavid coming along obviously did a lot for that franchise, and names like Alex DeBrincat. How important is it to secure their future, and how important is that presence in Pennsylvania for the OHL?
It is great. The Erie fans are as loud and boisterous and fun as any fans you're going to find in the Ontario Hockey League. It's nice to know that they're going to be there for a while. I think when the ownership changed hands a couple of years ago, there was a real move to get something done to secure where that team would be playing. Having them in Erie for 10 years, it's become a tremendous OHL market that when they first moved there from Niagara Falls, you had people saying, I don't know if I'm going to go to the games because I don't know what Sudbury is. I don't know what North Bay is. I've never heard of these places. Now they're just, I can't wait to get to the game because this team's coming, and they're just part of the fabric of the Ontario Hockey League. They've got a couple of OHL championships. Connor McDavid has played there, but they've got a long list of distinguished players that they've put in the National Hockey League.
I want to talk about any other stories that are catching your eye. One thing I noticed, Owen Sound celebrating their 20th year in the OHL. They had some spiffy uniforms. I don't know if they're wearing them during games or not. Tell us about that. Maybe anything else that's catching your eye in the Midwest this year.
There's another team that if you go back 20 years, it's kind of 20 years of the Owen Sound attack. They're able to do some celebrating that way. Owen Sound nearly lost that franchise. They were maybe going to move to Cornwall. That was one of the reports. And that was going back 20 years ago. And a number of local business people stepped up and said, no, we're not going to let that happen. And when you look at Owen Sound demographically, their population is under 30,000. And you would think, how can you have a major junior team with that kind of a small fan base to draw from? But they've got so many great fans from outside actual Owen Sound, and the passion for the team is absolutely rabid. They kind of play the, hey, we might be the little guy, but we got a big bite. And that's kind of how they approach things, and their team has played that way too. And they spent some time last year kind of loading up on some younger players. Matt Guzda is a goaltender of theirs who will be one to certainly watch because he's kind of been playing that number one role since the age of 16. Is somebody who's a great big goaltender and is from Knoxville, Tennessee, and maybe has an opportunity to open up another hockey market as we move forward.
Thanks for doing this, Mike, and best of luck covering the Knights this season.
Anytime. Best of luck to you guys.
That's Mike Stubbs. He is the voice of the London Knights, giving us perspective on everybody in the Midwest Division in the Ontario Hockey League. You're listening to the intermission of Carstar, Cape Breton Eagles Hockey, 1270 CJCB.